Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Dark Deeds. This is the first game by Games and Gears. It is a 2 to 5 player game that takes roughly about an hour to play. It's completely competitive, so that each player is going to be competing against the other players to gain the most victory points to win the game. So each player is going to play a minion that is trying to gain their Dark Patron's favor. And they will do this by looting citizens, knocking out guards, defeating the Dark Patron's nemesis, and completing dark deeds. Now, the cool thing about this game, and the part that I really have had a ton of fun with, is all the backstabbing and all that really kind of gets you immersed in the game. You can play these different plot cards that can do all kinds of nasty things to your opposing players. On top of that, there's a lot of strategy to it because you can plan out how you approach the streets, and as guards get to the end of the street and to get taken off, those guards will actually go after the player that has the most suspicious token on his possession. So on top of that, this game has a ton of flair with the artwork, like I said, absolutely beautiful. The artwork was done by Mark Gibbons. For those of you that are familiar with Warhammer and some of the older artwork for Warhammer, he did a ton of artwork for them and really brought that world to life. So as he did in that, so he does in Dark Deeds. Amazing game artwork-wise and a lot of fun to play. Definitely check it out if you guys get a chance. There's also 2 expansions for it already that are convention exclusives, I believe. And I will show you what both of those do. I'm sure you guys can pick them up possibly at other conventions for those of you that go. And for those of you that are not, I'm sure that at some point that those will be made available in some fashion, either on their websites or in another fashion. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. In the street deck, you're going to find 5 different types of cards. You have the guards, nemesises, and 3 different types of citizens. You have clerics, merchants, and artisans. Each different type of card is going to have a different color border to signify what that card is. So for example, the guards are always going to have the black bordered cards. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown of some of the cards. So with guards, you're going to have the number on the top is going to be the number that you have to roll equal to or greater than to defeat them in combat. The little number underneath that is the number that you'll have to roll equal to or greater than to sneak past them. And then at the bottom of the card is the number of victory points you get when defeating them. Nemesises work similarly, where you'll have the number that you'll have to roll to defeat them, and their victory points that are listed. With citizens, same thing, the number that you have to roll to defeat them, and the number of victory points that you get for them. And we'll take a closer look at these in those sections. The Tavern deck is also going to have 5 different types of cards. And again, those cards are going to be defined by their borders. So the first type of card you're going to have are the plot cards, which will have the black borders. Then you're going to have Dark Deed cards that'll have the red. And then the 3 different types of citizens that you'll find on the streets again. You have the clerics, merchants, and artisans. And this is the loot that you can potentially get from them, which we will cover a little bit more in detail later. So with these cards, the plot cards are going to have the ability that you can play with those cards when you play them. The Dark Deed cards are going to have requirements that you need to meet in order to complete those as well. And then the 3 different types of loot cards are going to have the bonus that you get for them and the number that you have to get in order to capture that loot, which we're going to take a closer look at during that phase. Setup is very straightforward. First off, you're going to put the street mat down. From here, then you're going to go ahead and shuffle up the street deck and put it on the far side. Then you're going to go ahead and deal out 3 cards along the track, face up, and then you'll deal 3 cards face down. Once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and grab the Tavern deck, shuffle that deck up as well, and place it off to the side here. Go ahead and flip over the top 2 cards. From here, then you can go ahead and put out the suspicion marks. You'll have 2 different types. You have a 3-point suspicion mark and a 1-point suspicion mark. You'll also need the most suspicious token and the dice to go along with it. Alright, so for player setup, the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is deal out 3 cards from the Tavern deck to each player. And then from here, then each player is going to go ahead and roll the dice to see who goes first. So starting with our top player there, he gets a 6. Our player over here gets a 9, and the bottom player will get a 9 as well. So these two will roll off. This guy gets a 2, and he gets a 10. So he will be the first player and will also get the most suspicious token. From here, we're ready to start the game. Right, so now we're going to take a look at a player turn. So each player turn is going to have a certain sequence that they must follow in order to complete their turn. So the first thing is to go to the tavern. So when you go to the tavern, you have two choices. You can either take one of the face-up cards that is shown, or you can do a random draw from the tavern deck. If you take one of the cards that's face-up, so let's go ahead and say we take the snitch card, then the top card of the tavern deck would be revealed and flipped over. If we decide to take the top card from the tavern deck, these two cards would get discarded and removed from play, and then the next two cards would be flipped face up. When we're done with that, then we'll move on to the next stage, which is to go to the street. So during this step, we can play any number of the tavern cards that we have in our hand. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. So we have a snitch, mine, a dagger, and we have one dark deed. So we can play any of those cards that we have in our hands. The only thing that we cannot play are loot cards because we don't actually have those loot items yet, which this is the one part of the game that people have the hardest time with. When you have a loot card in your hand, it's simply that you have the knowledge that this item is somewhere on the street potentially. And so you must go and get it at this point in order to play it onto the field. When it is played onto the field, then you do have it and you will benefit from it. Once you've decided to play any of your cards from your hands, then you can also choose to do one of the following actions, which is to sneak past any guards on the street, to attack a guard or nemesis, to rob a citizen, or to lay low. And we're going to take a closer look at each one of those actions later. Once you're done with that, then you're going to go ahead and move street cards. So if there is still a card in the 6th slot of the street, it is going to be discarded. So with these first 3 cards that are face down, they're simply discarded and they will not be revealed during the game. All the other cards are going to go ahead and slide down, and then a new card will be flipped and revealed. And you would reveal any empty slots. So if you happen to have looted this guy here and removed him, then those cards would have slid down as well, and you would have filled 2 slots. And there are certain repercussions to cards moving off of these spaces at the ends, which I'm going to take a closer look at during that section. The last thing that you're going to need to do is if you have more than 6 cards in your hands, then you must discard down to 6 cards because your hand limit is 6. Once you're done with that, then it'll move on to the next player. Now it's time to take a closer look at some of the actions that you can perform during your turn. So the first thing we're going to look at is sneaking past guards. So in order to go after a citizen, if there's any guards that are between your target, then you must sneak past them. When you're going for a target on the street, you always enter from the right side and make your way down towards the left side. So let's go ahead and say that we're going to try to rob this artisan down here so that we can gain this dagger. On our way down, we notice that there's a guard, so we must try to sneak past that guard. In order to sneak past the guard, we're going to roll the dice, and we must roll equal to or greater than his value in the small white ring on his card. We can add any items that we happen to have that we've already played on the field that add cunning bonuses to that score. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and roll our dice. And we rolled a 5, which is greater than the 4, so we do sneak past the guard and we do make it to our artisan. Now, if there happened to have been more guards on the street, so say like there was another guard over here that was revealed on this card, we would have had to sneak past this guard first and then that guard. If we happen to fail, so let's go ahead and say that we rolled a 3 to sneak past this guard, we don't actually make it to our target and we will have to lay low and get away from the guard, which we'll cover in the laying low section. The next action we're going to look at is to attack a guard or nemesis that's on the street, or one that happens to be chasing or following you, which we're going to go ahead and cover that a little bit more later. But right now, let's go ahead and take a look at how combat works against the guard or nemesis. So the first thing, just like when we talked about the sneaking past guards, if there was any guards between us and our target, we would again have to sneak past them. But for us, we don't have anybody between it. So at this point, then we would go ahead and roll the dice, and we must roll equal to or greater than the value that's on the top of the guard's card. And we get to add any items that we have face up on our field that are in play, which we don't have anything currently. So we need to roll a 6 or better. We happen to roll a 1, so we do not defeat the guard. So at this point, we have to try to sneak away from the guard. Again, we'd roll the dice, and we'd have to roll equal to or greater than the 4 that's listed there. We do. If we would have failed, then the guard would chase us, and he would be moved to being in front of our playing area. Since we did get past him, then we simply would just lay low, which we're going to cover what happens then, and our turn would be over. If we defeated the guard, so let's go ahead and say that we rolled something better like a 10, then the guard would be taken off the field. We would gain 1 suspicion mark equal to his value, so we would have gotten 1 suspicion mark, and his card would have been added to our score pile face down. Now with a nemesis, when you attack a nemesis, if you fail on a nemesis, then you simply just retreat and lay low. The nemesis will not chase you, and you don't have to roll for a sneak away test. The next action we're going to look at is robbing citizens, which is the only way that we're going to get our loot cards from our hand out to our playing area. So as we can see here, we have a dagger that's an artisan loot card. So we would need to try to rob one of the artisans that is out on the street in order to play this loot card. So at this point, again, like we've talked about before, if we have any guards between us and our target, then we must sneak past them. So we do have an artisan over here that doesn't have any guards, so he would be the better choice because we don't have to roll to sneak past guards. But the artisan over here is worth more victory points, so we could choose to go after him and sneak past the guard in order to gain more points. Let's go ahead and just play it safe though. We're going to go after this guy. So at this point we would roll the dice. If we roll equal to or greater than his value, then we successfully have robbed him. We can also add any cunning bonuses from any items that we have on our field. So let's go ahead and roll. And we rolled a 5. So we do defeat him. So we will gain suspicion marks equal to his victory points. So we'll pick up 2. Then his card is played face down to our score pile. On top of that, the value that we beat him by, so he's a 2, and we've beat him, we rolled a 5, so we've beaten him by 3 points. So at this point, then we would look at our hands, and if we have any blue cards that are 3 points or less, we can choose to play 1 card. So we have a dagger that's 2 points, so we can go ahead and play that on our field, and now we have +1 strength on any of our strength tests. The last option you have during your turn is laying low. And as we've kind of talked about already, when you fail to sneak past the guard or nemesis, it is forced upon you to lay low. So when you lay low, you will discard one of your loot cards from your hands, and based on its level, so if we discard this dagger that's a level 2, we would lose that many suspicion marks. Now sometimes you want to do that in order to try to get rid of the most suspicious minion token, which we're going to take a look at more later. And there's a couple other reasons why you would want to decrease your suspicion. Now we're going to take a closer look at the suspicion marks. So as we've already talked about, you can gain suspicion marks by attacking and defeating guards, attacking and defeating nemesises, or robbing citizens. When you gain suspicion marks, each time you do, you're going to reevaluate to see who has the most. Whichever player does will receive the most suspicious minion token, and the same thing applies when you decrease your amount of suspicion marks. You will reevaluate and see who has the most. Some plot cards will allow you to move suspicion marks from your pile to somebody else's, so keep that in mind as well. And you're going to see why you want to manage your suspicion marks in this next step. Let's take a closer look at guard activities now. So during the step when the street is going to be moved down, if a guard is in the last spot of the street and is about to be discarded, instead of him being discarded, he's going to begin chasing the player that has the most suspicious minion token on him. So he would simply be placed in front of that player, and during that player's turns, if that player wishes to attack or target anybody on the street, he must sneak past any guards that are chasing him. On top of that, if he happens to go after a nemesis that is chasing or that is following him, he must sneak past any guards in order to do that, which we're going to take a closer look at that step in the next sequence. Now, if he attacks a guard that's chasing him, he does not have to sneak past any guards that are chasing him on top of that guard. But if he does anything on the street, he again will have to sneak past any guards that are chasing him. Now, at the end of his turn, if he happens to have 10 or more suspicion and has one or more guards chasing him, he's going to lose all the loot cards that he has in front of him. He's going to lose all of his suspicion marks, and he will discard all the guards chasing him. So that is one bad thing to having a lot of suspicion if you have guards chasing you. Now another thing is if at any point during your turn you have no suspicion, if you're able to get rid of the suspicion that you have, if you have 0 suspicion, if there are any guards chasing you, then you will simply discard those guards from you. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at what happens with nemesis activities. So when a nemesis is in the last spot of the street and is about to be discarded, he will move in front of the player whose turn it is. So let's go ahead and say that it was this player's turn, and at the end of the turn this nemesis would leave the street. He would be placed in front of that player and become that player's nemesis. So when a nemesis becomes a player's nemesis, only that player can attack that nemesis that's following them. No other player can choose to attack that nemesis. On top of that, if that player has any guards that are chasing him, he must sneak past those guards in order to attack that nemesis. And at the end of the game, if there are any nemesis chasing the players, each player will add up the value of each nemesis that's chasing them or following them, and will subtract that from their victory points. So you want to get rid of any nemesis that happens to be chasing you if you can. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at Dark Deed cards. So Dark Deed cards that you happen to have in your hands are going to have certain requirements in order to complete them. So with this one, it says that you score when you successfully attack the bounty hunter, tax collector, or the sheriff. So you want to try to complete any dark deeds that you have in your hands, because at the end of the game, for each dark deed that's in your hand that you have not completed, you will receive negative victory points for those. So for example, with this one here, we do have the tax collector out, and so if we attack the tax collector and kill him, so let's go ahead and say that our player has done that, then we would remove his card, and again we would receive suspicion marks equal to his victory points. So we would pick up 7. From there, then we can go ahead and show all players our Dark Deed card that we've met its requirements, and then we can move that card to our score pile as well. The last thing we're going to take a look at is winning the game. So the game is played until all the street cards have left the street. Once that happens, then all players are going to reveal their hands and will receive negative points for each dark deed that is still in their hands. They will also receive negative points for any nemesis that are still chasing them. Once both of those things are done, then you can go ahead and total up any cards that you have face down in your victory pile. The player that has the highest score will be the winner of the game. Now I'm going to take you guys through a couple of complete turns so you can see how everything functions. So starting with our first player, he's going to go ahead and choose one of the cards from the tavern. He's going to go ahead and take the monk's robes. From here then we reveal the next card, and then we can move to the street. So he's going to go ahead and try to rob one of the artisans since he has a dagger card and he'd like to play that. So we have 2 different ones to choose from. We can go after the artisan that has a little bit better value to gain more victory points, or we can try to sneak past the guard to go after the really easy guy But let's go ahead and just go after the woodsman because he's worth a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and roll our dice. We rolled an 8. So we do defeat him, and we're going to gain 2 suspicion marks for that. And we're going to go ahead and subtract his value from the dice. So it's 6 is the difference. And so we can play 1 blue card that's a 6 or less. So we're going to go ahead and play the dagger, which is 2. That's going to go out on our field, and our player's turn is done. So the card in the 6th slot is going to be discarded, and then the rest of the cards will be shifted over. These first cards that are face down will not be revealed and just simply move off the board. From here, then it's going to go to the next player, and he's going to go ahead and take a backstab card. From here, then we flip over the next card, and then he chooses as well. He also has a loot card, so he's going to go ahead and try to go after the apprentice. So he's going to have to sneak past the guard and rolls a 10, so he successfully sneaks past, and then he's going to attack the apprentice and rolls an 11. So he does defeat the apprentice. He's going to gain 1 suspicion mark for defeating him for his victory point value. The difference between his values is 10, so you can play a card that's 10 or less. So he does have a crossbow, so he'll play that, and then this guy moves to his score pile. From here again, we go ahead and discard the card from the street, and it shifts down, and we fill the street with 2 new cards. And we move over to our third player. Now, he doesn't have any cards that he wishes to play, so he's going to go ahead and go to the tavern. He doesn't really want another Dark Deed card, so he's going to go ahead and discard those by taking the top card from the tavern, and 2 new cards will be dealt. From here, he doesn't have there aren't any citizens out that he has loot for, so he's just going to go ahead and attack this first guard here. He needs to roll a 6 or greater, and he does with an 11. So the guard is going to be removed. He gets 1 suspicion mark for that, and it goes to his discard pile, or to his score pile. Again, the street is going to shift. And one thing to keep in mind is as each player gets his suspicion marks, we're reevaluating to see who has the most. He still does, so he retains the most suspicious minion mark. But if another player had gotten more points, then he would have become the new suspicious minion. So from here, then we start again with this player here. And he's going to go ahead and grab the sawed-off card. So we reveal the next card, and then we go ahead and go after one of our guys. So from here, we don't have any cards that we can play, and our Dark Deed card requires the Bounty Hunter, Tax Collector, Sheriff, who the Sheriff is out, so we are going to go ahead and try to attack him. So we need an 8 or greater, and we rolled a 5. So a 5 is not going to be enough, even with our daggers plus 1 strength, so we fail and we have to lay low. So when we lay low, we're going to go ahead and discard our monk's robes, and we will lose 2 suspicion from that. So now that we have lost our suspicion, our Dark Deed, or our most suspicious minion token, will be given to one of the other players. Since there's a tie, our player gets to choose which one gets it, so he's going to go ahead and give it to this player here. And then from here, we would continue on with each player going and taking their turn, as we've described. So there's also 2 expansions for Dark Deeds. Now with these expansions, I don't know if these are going to be exclusive to the specific cons that they're associated with. For example, this one is from Adepticon, and there was another one from Gen Con, which we're going to look at in a minute. And I don't know if these will be available elsewhere or with different cons. But let's go ahead and take a quick look at them. So each one of these expansions is going to give you new loot cards, as well as a new Dark Deed card, and they have a small little rule variant. So for the Adepticon one, it also comes with another dice, and it comes with another token, which will have different effects based on when you use it, and with this one, it works during the laying low phase. So based on what side of the coin that you're facing will determine what kind of results happen and it's just like a little rule variant that'll add a little bit of flair to the game. The other expansion that was released is the one that was from Gen Con this year. And with this one, again, it adds more loot cards, as you can see. It has a couple new plot cards as well as a Dark Deed card, and one new Nemesis card, which has a variant number on it based on the purple dice that you get. So when you fight this, each time you fight it, you'll roll that purple dice, and at the end of the game, when you're determining how many victory points it's worth, you'll also roll the dice. So it could be worth 1 point or a full 20. Well, I hope that gave you guys a good idea of how the game works. As always, if you guys have any questions at all, please drop me a comment in the comment section below and let me know what you think, good or bad. I'm always trying to improve my videos, so if you guys have any comments or criticisms that you would like to see, if there's any games specifically that you would like me to cover, please let me know. I'm always interested in finding out what you guys are interested in seeing as well. I also have a ton of other games that I picked up this year that I'll be working on shortly, so you guys will be seeing some more videos for those as well. Until next time, have fun at the table.